Koto, welcome everyone. Just check, Councillor Scott online, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sorry.
No, you're right, brilliant.
I was just disconnecting my headphones, apologies.
No, that's all good. Just throughout the meeting, if I can't see you or if I ignore you, it's not personal, and just interrupt us and we'll pick you up.
Will do, thanks.
Thank you. Alrighty, I'll just invite everyone to stand and I'll just let us in a karakia. E rare tamanui te rā, whiti maruka, whiti mai raro, kia pia te ti, kia wana te ti, kia rito te ti, kia tau mai te Māori, umi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, welcome everyone, and I think Michelle's going to lead us in the Waiata. Thank you.
E re re ra e, aku wai Māori, e maringi atu ra, kia koutou e. E re re ra e, aku wai Māori, e maringi atu ra, kia koutou e. Rangi tata ki runa puri ora ki raro, te tai o ara te uki waho e. E re re ra e, aku wai mihi e.
Kia ora, brilliant, thank you. Please be seated. I sort of updated that extra. Already, welcome everyone. McGregor Simpson, welcome. Nice to see you from the Jordanene Community Board. Great to have you along. I have an apology from Councillor Parker. Is there any other apologies? Obviously, we've got Councillor Scott online. I'll move the apology. Can someone second that? Thank you, Councillor Jackson. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we've got public forum. We've got a late public forum, and I'm just going to invite first up Peter, who lives in Dunkirk Street, and he just wanted to briefly talk to the council around some issues in that area. So please welcome, come on up, Peter. Jump on this, and Jackie could, or some. Oh, brilliant! Thank you. Yeah, take a seat there, and the floor is yours. We're listening.
Yes, I'm Mr. Peter Paisley. I live on 27 Dunkirk Street. I must congratulate the council to get rid of those the rat bags out at Washington. Well, I like to come around and put the bulldozers through that other the street, the house opposite me, because they're up and down. It used to be up and down Dunkirk Street, motorbikes letting crackers off 3 o'clock in the morning. The dogs are all barking over there. Early hours, I must say they're quieting down a bit now. But I'd like to get rid of them. It's the value of all our houses right around that neighbourhood. I'd like to get them out of it. That's my question. Why we have to live with that?
Now, look, it is a good question, and the house Mr. Paisley is referring to as a Kāinga Ora house, and that's the challenge. We're not in the position to go and buy that one and bulldoze it. But as I did say, I am meeting with Kāinga Ora, the regional head, in the next couple of weeks around some of those issues, and also just on the basis of some of our conversation, I know our compliance guys, our team, around parking, I think the cars are back on the footpath, but there's some of those things, yeah, and so that I'm sure we'll put that into the system for the team to keep on that. Yep. Oh, hold on, we'll just...
Sometimes there's 8 or 9 cars there at night. And sometimes early in the morning, they've cars going backwards and forwards, must be picking up their drugs, I think. And it is a drug outfit, I know that for sure. So I'm sort of, are the police scared of them, or aren't they going to raid them, or what's going on? I'd like to know. I think I'm only picking up for myself, I don't know about the neighbours thing. The joke across the road, he lives next door, I don't know how he gets on. But I'd be doing me, if it was me, I'd be doing me nana properly. You shouldn't have to put up with that. Should you?
No, I totally agree, and that's a great argument for decentralisation and giving more power to councils. but we don't have the power to move people on from Kaingaroa housing at the moment, unfortunately. So, but look, we certainly hear the issues, and within our power, we're working to do as much as we can to support the area.
I'm sort of sick of
Yeah.
it. But they've been pretty quiet the last 2 or 3 months, I was that. But before that, it was bloody awful. And I got a sick wife to put up with it too. So I thought the council would be able to do something about it, but what can you do?
But we can do what we can within the within the acts that we operate under, and that's the challenge and bylaws, etc. Take your point around dog barking, and I know those sites are being monitored as an example at the moment, but they've still got to meet a threshold, and the enforcement officers around the parking on the road, on the footpath, they'll continually be monitoring that, and I know the team are working as closely with police on some of those things as we can. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't have a silver bullet for you, Peter, around moving those individuals on. But it's one of the conversations also that we need to be looking at into our long-term planning, and what's the opportunity, what tools can councils use to pull those communities up and invest in those communities. So yeah.
Another thing, I feel like doing something for myself. I know it's against the law to do it, but that's what I feel like doing.
Look, I certainly hear you, and yeah, I won't make comment on that, Peter. But no, look, you certainly have been heard, and we've got District Commander Vicky Walker, who's just about to speak, and I'm sure she'll just touch on it as best she can, without going into any detail, because I'm sure there's
Thank you very much.
ongoing challenges. But
Thank you.
I can assure you that whether it's not to speak for Vicky, but everyone's operating as best they can within the rules and the toolbox that they have in front of them, and sometimes that's the challenge.
Well, I thought about shifting myself, but as I say, I'm retired, and but nowhere to buy my house now, not round there. So all the houses have been devalued with that crowd over there.
Yeah, and Peter, how long have you've been?
Eh?
You've been living there a long time, haven't you?
Well, I reckon, since all the houses have been devalued around, our rates should go down. Instead of putting them up 11%, they should go down 11%. We should get a discount, I reckon.
Based on your neighbours.
Why not?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think it'll get everyone in Timaru complaining about their neighbours.
No harm in asking.
No, look, we certainly hear you, and we hear your frustrations, and look, I think we've got to put our shoes, our feet in your shoes, and walk in your shoes a couple of miles and understand the frustrations if we were living next to those sorts of people. So within our powers, we'll do as much as we can, certainly can. Yeah.
Another thing, they've got about 3 or 4 dogs over there, and they hear them at night, but they're not too bad lately. But I don't know if they're registered, probably aren't. But,
Yeah, and as I said, our officers, our team are working as closely in those elements as far as enforcement that we can as well. Yeah, both dogs and parking. Yeah.
when they park on the road, they park during. I think that bus hit them the other day. That they generally park right around the bend. That latest bus, what do they call it? Like My Way, is it?
Yep.
That I think it hit one of the cars. So it crashed into one of the cars because it was right on the bend. Could you realise? You get those cars from all over, they're right parking, and sometimes they're over your driveway. But, it's very frustrating, I tell you.
No, I understand that. So yeah, we'll continue to work within the rules that we can. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. Appreciate
Thank you very much.
No worries, and appreciate
Thank
you coming today, Peter. Thank you. Sorry, I apologise. I didn't actually open it for. Did anyone have any questions of Peter? I think we're well covered. Yeah, no. So, right, we'll now move within public forum. We welcome District Commander Vicky Walker. Great to have you with us.
Apparently the red button's the thing to do, so here we go. I'm actually the area commander. I haven't been promoted to district commander, so, but yeah, not quite at that level of grandeur, shall we say, yet. But yes, so look, I've been asked to speak to the council, but I'm probably more interested in what questions you have for me. First off, I can talk to you about what our area priorities are at the moment. 3 spring to mind quite quickly. First of all is our roads. So at this stage for the performance year that we gather, we're looking at 8 fatalities. Last year we were looking at 6. We have the greatest volume of state highways in the area and the greatest amount of risk, and it's definitely an area priority for us to ensure that people can actually go about their business safely. That means we do a significant amount of enforcement, and that includes me. So I'm quite not too bad at riding the old speed ticket. I had 139 on State 79 just last Sunday. Tourist spending 10 days in our beautiful country, doing 139 kilometres per hour, 2 k's off walking for the rest of his 10 days. So the risk is there, and at quite at that high level. Intersections, and I'll probably speak more about probably more of the north area of this. In terms of our intersections, you know, they are high risk times for us, particularly with sunstrike, people going about the business and just not understanding where they are, and then all of a sudden you're crossing through into the path of a vehicle. But I think probably an aspect that we don't tend to focus on a little bit is actually the serious injury crashes. So that's people who are injured as a result of a crash and suffer the long-term effects of that. And I think that's something that, you know, why we enforce in what we call our RIDS offences, which is restraints, impairment, distractions and speed. That's our primary, plus what we call the DNF series, so that's driving behaviour and intersections. So that's our primary focus and what we will continue to work with across the area. Then the next aspect that I would talk about is family harm. So we did recently a district-wide intel report around non-metropolitan family harm, so looking at Aoraki area and the rural Canterbury, and particularly looking at how the changing nature of how Aoraki and Timaru looks and feels with our refugees and migrants, and actually are we getting the service to the right people at the right place at the right time. So that's a significant piece of work for us to do, and also look at the effects of rural isolation as well, and how we can actually connect with people and actually, you know, offer the services to address them to be safe as well. And I guess the last aspect is around our volume crime offending. So that's your theft ex cars, your burglary, etc. We have seen an increase in that, and what I guess has probably hit the media the most is your young people doing ram raids, and then they've called them smash and grabs because they're not using vehicles to access the premises. I've got to say the team in Aoraki and Timaru are really, really good at actually getting onto these offenders, and it's probably because we're out there in the wee hours, and the offenders, they stick out more, if that makes sense, so they don't get lost in the volume of the metropolitan areas, and you know, we know where they're going to be going, etc. And generally there's a bit of lead-in time, so I'm very cognizant that if we've got offences happening in the metro area, if it gets too hot there, there's a thought, you know, basically they'll go somewhere else where there's not. What they don't count on is the fact that our police are out there in the wee hours, actively patrolling and you know, looking around our softer targets, shall we say, and picking up these offenders. We had a spree that came out of Christchurch all the way through down to Geraldine. And all 4 offenders were picked up through basically tenacity. We spent a lot of time waiting for these. They'd gone to ground. We had a dog unit in the area, but we spent a lot of time waiting for them to pop up, if that makes sense, and actually make sure that we could actually pick them up when they did, to the point where we had one that tried to knock on someone's door so that they could get mum to pick them up. So we provided that transportation.
Gaffrey Hill.
Yep. How about retail crime? What's going on there?
Yeah, look, retail crime, it's certainly, as we're in this cost of living crisis, temptation, a lot of pressure on people. It isn't as bad as what we see in the metropolitan areas, but it's certainly the temptation is there. Again, the other thing that we have on our side is we typically know who the people are, and we can pick them up and hold them accountable. And what we get here is we get a greater level of basically, because we know the offenders, we can hold them account for that spree and put them before the courts. So we're pretty fortunate there.
So we're not having the same issues like they're walking into supermarkets and just walking out with a trailer load of groceries or anything like that.
Look, I mean, that does happen, but it's certainly not to the extent that it happens in the metropolitan areas.
what can we do to help old Pete over there at Dunkirk Street?
Beg your pardon?
What can we do to help the situation in Dunkirk Street?
Look, I'm sorry, I won't talk about police tactics around that. I'm very aware of that particular address, so I'm sorry I can't comment on that. What I will say is that my team are very aware of that, and they do spend a lot of time in areas that we know that there are antisocial behaviours occurring, but we can't be there the whole time. We can't be 24/7 sitting in a particular area because we have other aspects of demand that we need to address.
Thank you. Councillor Burt.
Hi, welcome. Is there a correlation between the access and availability of drugs here now and the increase to your high volume crime like your theft ex cars and burglaries?
So I guess probably on that point I'd like to reiterate the Commissioner's messaging around what the most prevalent drug is for our society, and that's alcohol. It touches most aspects of our community. It's generally the starter, shall we say. The prevalence is high, and it is a driver of our crime. Drugs itself becomes another aspect of that. There is drugs in our society, we're aware of that, but I'd probably encourage the conversation to be more around actually our alcohol use.
And so you're not seeing an increase in drug debt driving crime though? I mean, obviously your alcohol's an exacerbator for everything, but there's not an incidence of like I'm obviously interviewing these people finding that they have drug debts to pay for their crime and that sort of thing.
I wouldn't draw that correlation.
Just go on. Excellent. And do you an obvious question in an election year, you find you have enough resources to do what you need to keep people safe?
I can't comment politically.
Thank you. All right.
Oh, I love it. Questions that the area commander can comment on, please. Councillor Jackson.
Hi Vicky, I just wanted to ask about gang activity. Obviously there's been a lot of talk about that over the past few months with taking those gangs out of play out there at Washtike. So have we seen a decrease in gang activity around town? What sort of things are we seeing happening?
I think when you tend to run a bulldozer through a gang pad, you do see a decrease in gang activity in the town. And also when you look at what's happened to High Street as well. So two significant locations of interest that have been in the Timaru community for a long time. There will always be an element of gang membership within any community, and we're proactively working with our partner agencies to address when we see people looking at coming into an area. So definitely one of our front-footing activities, shall we say.
Hi Vicky. I live in the small town of Geraldine, and I guess one of the things I often get asked about is the availability of our policemen in Geraldine. I know we've normally got two. I know some have been working away from there for some time, and I guess it's just them being available to the public. Sometimes you can go 3 or 4 days without seeing anyone at the police station. And just wondering, is there a lack of police in South Canterbury, or have we got a bit of an issue with getting police to come here and work, or?
Getting slightly political there, which I won't go into, but
Yeah.
we currently have Geraldine fully staffed. We're also looking at potentially bringing our station support officer, which is our police employee who runs the front counter, to work in Geraldine to make sure that station's a little bit more accessible to the public. But as far as I'm aware, apart from Pleasant Point, who sometimes works out of there, who's currently on leave. We're allowed leave sometimes. But, we're fully staffed.
Thank you. Question from Temuka?
Well, not a question really, but Vicky, I'd actually like to use this opportunity to acknowledge the great work that I'm seeing out in the Pleasant Point Temuka ward. And as you know, I talk to the officers out there pretty much every week, often several times a week, and I know that some of the work they're doing there elsewhere around the country, they'd never get to it. They just never would. And the team out there is very focused on our community, keeping it safer, and holding those to account that don't obey the law. And I think Malcolm and all his team out there do a fantastic job. And so thanks very much.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear. I guess one of our Commissioner's priorities is the services that New Zealanders expect and deserve. And I've got to say, I've worked in a number of patches up and down the country. I've been a rolling stone that gathers no moss. This is my third time back in this particular patch with a whānau connection. But the police are invested in their community, and they do give the community service that you're talking of, and because they live there, they live, breathe, and own it. Malcolm and his team have had a pretty shocker of a ride in terms of some of the crashes. The one at Geraldine Species Bridge springs to mind, but they've been working through that, and they are really a testament of a team who are committed to their community and invested there.
Thank you. Anyone else there? A question for me, Vicky, what are some of the challenges you can throw at us? What is, leaders, an organisation that, Peter's come here today, not saying specifically on his issue, but what are the, you raised alcohol as an issue, we've got groups like Safer Communities, what are some of the things that, we could be doing to better support, and, whether it's bringing people together or, what are some of those things? Sorry to put you on the spot.
That's what I'm here for. Look, I guess probably the thing for me in terms of policing, it's matured from an aspect where we're basically locking people away and throwing away the key. And we actually got to look into the whole concept of causation. So how do we actually get the right service to the right people at the right time? How do we engage our community partners and NGOs who have the mana to do that mahi, have that lived experience, understand the path that people are going down, and actually offer that small, that doorway out. Vicky Walker, the family harm offender, may not take it at that time, but when she knows that it's available and we keep offering it, one day she'll do that. So I think probably it's all about partnerships to me. Police is one aspect of the partnership of a community, but you've got a whole bunch of really great organisations who offer some fantastic services that can take the next step into addressing causation and reducing intergenerational effects of harm and victimisations in families. So I guess probably if I was going to say anything, it would be to support the NGO services who are out there and ready to do that work.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. It's that all of community response again, isn't it, to the issues? Yeah. Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Cooper? No? Team, you're all good? Hey, thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Alrighty, team. We'll move now to the agenda. And we've got any urgent business? No. No. Thank you. Matters of a minor nature. Councillor Whittington.
Yeah, just wondered if we could get an update from Andrew, if we've had a response from Whakakatahi.
Oh, yes.
Where they came a couple of weeks ago and made promises they'll get straight back to us. So I'm interested to see how straight they are, or whether it's like their roads and full of potholes.
Right, good question. We'll tackle that in minor nature. Thank you. Whakatahi update. Appreciate that. Conflicts of interest? No? Yeah, I thought there might be one. Yep. VT, REM, conversation. Anyone else?
And me too, me and Nigel.
Yeah.
BT.
Yep. So REM, cool, thank you. Recorded that. Jess, anyone else with conflicts? No. Okay, brilliant. We'll go now to confirmation of minutes, 7.1 on 6. So move, thank you. Just wanted to pick up something. There was only, oh no, that's okay. Yep, so Councillor Burt, mover, Councillor Booth, seconder. Put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. It's carried. 7.2 minutes, 20th of June on page 14. We'll move it. Councillor Booth, thank you. Councillor Pye, put the motion, all those in favour please say aye. It's carried. 7.3 on page 23, 27th of June. Councillor Oliver, thank you. Councillor Shannon, you don't actually have to be here, but that's all right. Yeah. we'll go Councillor Pye, but you don't actually, as far as this need to be here. Yeah. Councillor Pye, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Got that? Yeah, cool. Brilliant, thank you. Schedules of functions attended. 8.1. Attended by Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Councillors. Thank you again for those that have attended, such as the Deputy Mayor in Inua. Had a great time, and he will be reporting on that at a date into the future, probably with the girls that went. I think that's great, so we really look forward to that. And all those, I think Councillor Booth attended something as well, so I appreciate that. I'll move that report. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Burt, thank you. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 8.2 on page 42. Schedule of functions attended by the Chief Executive. And so, Stacey, did you just want to make a comment on that?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, all fine, yep.
Oh, okay, sorry. I just noticed, I'm not sure if Bede is there today, but I noticed that he had attended the Rangitata Revival Program Steering Group meeting. We had a presentation from this group at Environmental Services last month. And I just wondered if Mr. Paul Cooper could provide an update on the Mana to Mana group meetings. I suppose as a governor, I just am a little bit concerned we're not aware of what's sort of the detail of these meetings and what implications that might have on council. So I'm just keen to understand the meetings, and yeah, just a little bit concerned about the community involvement with that sort of base flow conversation that's happening. So I'm keen to understand a little bit more if we need to be better aware of this as governors.
Thanks, Mr. Cooper.
Through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Scott. I attend the Mana to Mana group in relation to the South Branch of the Rangitata, which I think is what you're interested in predominantly. Part of keeping governance updated on what was happening there was bringing or having that presentation that we had a couple of weeks ago at the Environmental Services Committee. You can see there's quite a lot of framing up of future conversations happening is what I'd call it. And when I did attend my first meeting, which was about 3 months ago in Christchurch at ECAN, there were a couple of points that I took away from that. I went in not knowing much, and probably in that vacuum being a little suspicious of who was doing what and why. But I came away from that meeting reassured that everybody was there in good faith, acting in good faith, and that what was missing possibly from the public view was the timeline or the time scale over which this conversation is happening. And Carl Russell from the Runanga spoke at the opening of that meeting, and he said basically for them it's aspirational, it's a goal, and it's intergenerational. It'll take decades, and he even mentioned, and it could be 100 years. They're patient, and they'll just want to start the conversation. Obviously, there's many moving parts to that aspiration, in that there's a lot of complex land use rules or land use arrangements. There's leases, there's freehold land along there where the South Branch runs, and some of those leases are not straightforward. There might be lens, dock, and others that are involved in them. They're quite complex arrangements. So that's just one complexity. Another is that we've got roading through there. Two of the roads are gravel roads, I believe. Badham Road is sealed. And also down Badham Road, you've also got Alpine energy power lines and assets through there as well. So we have a situation where in the present day we have intention with what that aspiration is, lawful businesses being operating lawfully on land that they can use for that purpose. The conversation is about, in the future, if it were possible, how might we bring it back to wetlands or having water running through there like the Runanga would like. And that's about as far as it's gone. There's work happening in the science side of things to understand what flow would be required for that to happen. Also, there's a climate change aspect to it, in that the frequency of heavy downpours and flooding is increasing. What will that mean for the future? Will the river take it back, regardless of what our conversations might be? There's a piece of work there around the talking to landowners, and the perception in the governance team, and quite rightly, at this point, is that there's been very little engagement in a meaningful way. So that's yet to happen. My understanding from the project lead who was at the ECAN meeting, was it Lee Griffiths? I think was the name of the person. She said that comms and engagement plan is underway, and that is something that will happen very shortly. And my understanding is, and we heard it from the presenters 2 weeks ago, that comms plan is still being crafted, but they hope to go public very soon and go out to those stakeholders and landowners. So what I'm saying is, it's a long-term conversation that has begun. No decisions have been required of us yet, but we do, or I and Bede, want to keep governance as well informed as we can do, which is why we brought that presentation a couple of weeks ago. And we hope to continue to do that. And if you're not getting what you need, please feel free to come and talk to me at any time. So that's about what I'd say there, Your Worship.
No, that's cool, and appreciate you keeping it high level. I guess the concern for us, and I've talked to farmers out in that area, that they're just, and this was the concern that we had from the Rakatata Revival presentation, was that they're not being represented at the moment. So I think if there was one message that governance could give for those that are attending, is actually that this is imperative, that those landowners are represented at a very early stage, i.e. now and not tomorrow, and to keep us informed. And the opportunity, I think, at some point, once we're better informed, will all be, do we need to take a position on this as such, or do we have enough information to? So it's something that we can discuss into the future, but I think the key thing is that, and please, if I'm not correct, if you disagree with me, please say so, but I think at the moment we would all wish that the landowners are well informed, because basic property rights under law exist in this space. Councillor Booth.
Yeah, but isn't entertaining this in the first place like the thin wedge in it's putting a wedge in there, and like entertaining it at all is, it's just opening up a can of worms potentially, by the sound of it.
I think, it's Stacey here. I think more, Alan, it's just around understanding the base flow, and just the communication to landowners need to be involved in that future strategy. So I think me and Nigel's right, and Paul, just around updating and good understanding as governors on what that future looks like. So yeah, I think just being regularly updated on that would be really good for our farming community.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Scott and Booth. I think I've heard mixed views from the farmers that I have talked to. Some are supportive but suspicious. Others are supportive of the aspiration more openly. and others are not supportive. So you've got a real mix of views and current landowners, and I think the sooner that this project group truly brings in the landowners to the conversation, the better we'll all be in terms of understanding what the appetite is for that conversation to continue.
Cool. That's probably enough. I think we can wrap that up. Everyone comfortable with that? Now, the motion on the table, I'll go back to it, is to receive a note, schedule of functions attended by the Chief Executive. That's how we can go down a rabbit hole. That's wonderful. I'm happy to move that, Councillor Shannon. Appreciate that. But still a really valid conversation. So, and it's the opportunity to do it now. So I appreciate that. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Great. Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Scott, for bringing that up. Move to main reports now. We've got 9.1 on page 44, fixing of the common seal. Can I have a mover for that? Councillor Burt. In hot form today, Councillor Burt. Seconder. I think Councillor Jackson came in a close second. We'll take you. Put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 9.2, actions register update. So appreciate the work from the team in bringing this report. It's what we've been asking for. So if you just look through quickly the workshop on consultants we had, workshop and site visit to Timaru Airport. So this will just stay in the actions register until that's been completed. I would think, Jess, that's brilliant. Thank you. So that's ongoing. Information on the endowment fund, the Jordan one, showing resolutions on live stream. I've talked with Jackie, and that's something we want to just work toward for long-term plan sessions. And the reason why is just those that are chairing the meeting, we're all seeing the papers in front of us, but those on live stream aren't. So for us to remember, if we're chairing, actually, if there's important resolutions, we need to try and be reading those out at the moment, but we will try, and moving into next year for the long-term plan, try and get those up. Obviously there is cost and extra staff, so it's a bit to work through that. Report on things is ongoing, and that's coming, scheduled to come to council at a later date. So I'll happy to move. Is there any questions in regard to any of those actions? Yeah, Councillor Pye, thanks.
Is there a plan to do the same for our committees? Because I feel like some things are getting missed in our committees as well.
Yeah, got the nod. Perfect. Thank you. Any further questions on that? Councillor Pennington.
Just on the earthquake-prone buildings.
Yep.
That's the main street. Does that include the council's own earthquake-prone buildings?
My understanding was that one was focused on our one, wasn't it, that report?
Just making sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the case. Oh, yeah, thanks. Jump up. Thank you. Trudy?
Through you, Your Worship, it's on the council's actual buildings, but we can include, if you're wanting the detail of where we're at as a whole, I can work with my colleague Mr Cooper to expand the report, but that may take more time.
No, just bring the one on the council buildings. I look forward to it.
Yeah, no, look, and we'd be happy to have an update, but it doesn't have to be in a formal report in that regard. So, actions register update, thank you, that's great work. I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Pye. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. 9.3 on page 59. We have Timaru District Holdings Limited director fees. Did you want to talk to this? I know Bed's the authoriser, but or I'm happy to talk to it if you like.
I'm
Mr. Cooper.
It's up to you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can talk to it briefly. So the last time we updated fees was 3 years ago, 2020, I think in June. This has looked at, and you'll see from the report, the work that was done is a snapshot of a particular year. I think over that actual 3 year period, the fees have increased significantly more, taking into account that they do it for love. No, they don't do it for love. They're doing an important job and should be paid accordingly. But I do also recognise that there's challenges out there that a lot of people are facing. So, and these next three papers are on REM fees. But we do have good quality people in these roles as well. So I think we'll just open it up for discussion. The recommendation is approve the director's fees for TDHL increased by 2.2% with effect from the 1st of July, just been, and then whether we want to provide a direction to the officers to do the full director remuneration. And the question is also, do we need to, or is a bit of a snapshot enough moving forward? And probably interested to know also where you think we should be doing with this. Do we, there's things that we could be doing. You could, in theory, connect it with CPI. You could be doing a yearly annual update, or we could be doing the 3 yearly update as we are now. But keen to hear some discussion. Was it Councillor Piddington first, or yeah?
Yeah, look, I'm against rising all the fees across all the organisations at the moment. It's pretty tough out there. It's only a small amount, but it's minimal. And I'm not sure why we need a full director remuneration review when we can get it from the Institute of Directors. So again, we're spending money on consultants to increase things. And so I'm just saying no to all of it at this stage.
We will deal with the papers one by one, but I appreciate your position. Further discussion in regard to that, Councillor Pye, thank you.
I just have concerns that it seems a bit ad hoc, like we did it in 2014 and then 2020 and now it's up again. Like, do we actually have a process and a framework so that we're doing this on a regular basis with a set process, and one time we have a snapshot, next time we have a full review? I appreciate that in 2020 it was quite a full review because they did look like they were really underpaid, but yeah, so for that reason, I'm probably against it at this point in time as well.
We did do a full review because it hadn't been done for some time. And the question moving forward, are you going to get any different information from a snapshot versus a full review? And pay, to Councillor Piddington's point, paying to achieve what you already know. So also you're looking at within the report, obviously the remunerations within certain parameters. Are you comfortable with that? There's a few questions in there. And the other thing that I am conscious of, and I have said to some of you that 3 years ago we bought the Martin Jenkins report that you all be familiar with, and I have sent that through to you. And so there are some considerations that I believe we need to look at before the end of the year. And so that's to bring that paper back to reconsider have we got governance right. The recommendation on that report was actually that we need to move, certainly for the TDHL, was to move towards full independence. The questions we could be asking at the same time is 5 the right directors, or is 4 acceptable? So, and at the same time, if we're doing that review, so obviously if you were to bring it down to 4, you would look to have some cost savings in that. And so it's about, at the end of the day, it's about good governance, and do we have the right board for the right outcomes we're trying to achieve. And the same thing, if we're going to review that, then probably we should be looking across our CCOs in general. And it's not something we've necessarily had a discussion on. The likes of VT, we've got, I think, 8, sorry, don't quote me, but I think it's 8. And, it is more of a community directorship role, as opposed to the holding company. It is a different beast, but what, are we achieving the right results? And I don't know, I'm just asking the questions. Have we got the right number of directors? It seems a lot if you were just, having an outside looking in sort of lens on it. So, there's some wider questions. So as an example, we could do nothing now, but look to review in full some of these things. So I'm sorry, I'm posing a lot more questions than I have created answers. But I think these things are really important that we get it right, because ultimately we're in governance. These are the governing bodies for our entities, and they're pretty important. So, but happy to have any further comment. And then I think once we get through this one, it'll be easier to comment on the others. Thanks.
I'd probably endorse it. I feel like we're doing this in isolation, and we should be looking at the whole thing. Like we still don't have schools matrices or board evaluations, so, and yet we just want to put their fees up without knowing, I just think that it needs to be part of the whole picture rather than ad hoc.
Yeah, there are skills matrices sitting within all the boards, so they are available to us. But your point is, should we as a governing body be wrapping more around it. So, yeah, any further discussion? Councillor Booth.
I'm just thinking back when we did the review, and I thought there was some sort of a structure included in there when we should have been reviewing our remuneration. I'm sure there would have been actually. So I don't know why we just can't go back to that report and see what it actually said. And that was when we changed the structure of the directors, and so I don't actually specifically recall that. It's not in front of me at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that report had some stuff in there about when was the appropriate time.
Yeah, you could be right, and sorry, I'm not familiar at this point in time, but I think there again, I mean, that report was all about us getting to best practice, and I think we got halfway along the journey, and there's probably a good opportunity, you know, if we want to aim for the end of the year to tidy all this sort of up. So, you know, I certainly would support that. If it's sitting in there, that's the way we should be doing it moving forward, and it should be in the calendar for that. Councillor Piddington.
Yeah, look,
Sorry,
I
I'll go Councillor Booth and then come back to Councillor Piddington.
I agree with you, and
Yeah.
well, everyone. I just think it's too ad hoc. Just pops up. Let's have a look at the whole thing, do it properly,
Yeah,
and looking forward so we know what's going to happen, not
yeah.
as
So
it appears random.
yeah, so I would like this conversation to be around the CCOs, and that I'd like to approach audit and risk slightly different because it is just want to give a different lens to that if that's okay. Yeah. So any further discussion on that, on this? Yeah, Councillor Pye.
Sorry, one more thing that I was going to raise in a different report, but when I was looking up this, I discovered some draft documents from June 2020 that covered roles, a monitoring framework. This is in relation to TDHL, director competency framework, appointment process, and I had to dig through, council agendas to find that. And so my question is, do those documents still exist? Were they approved? And if so, where are they? Which they may be on the hub and I haven't seen them. And if they are, they should kind of be front and centre for councillors when we're making these decisions.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking, just to round this out a little bit, I agree there's further work to do, but it might be worth thank you, Trudy. But it might be worth a subgroup of councillors working with staff just to move this forward. Trudy, you look like you have something to say. Welcome.
For you, Your Worship, am I hearing a desire, and not speaking on behalf of the CE, but for to leave the report on the table, and that you would like a fuller, more comprehensive report with the issues that have been raised today? Is that maybe perhaps?
Yeah, no, 100%. Sorry, that is the roundup.
Yep.
No, we're getting there. So no, that's all good. No, appreciate that. Thank you. So is everyone comfortable with where the conversation's gone? So we will just be parking this. There would be no decision effectively. Yeah, Councillor Piddington.
Just last one. Is one of the councillors up for rotation at the AGM, and what's the process for that?
Yeah, so there's two. For TDHL, there is two individuals up for. But yeah, there's two. One is a councillor, one's an independent.
So what's the process though? Because it's not far away from the AGM.
Yeah, no, 100%. And so I think the question that I'd be asking is, prior to that, is we should probably be addressing that before, because it might be actually that we're wanting one less potentially. It might be that we're wanting more. I'm sorry, I'm not preempting a result, but so I think this is before, and so we've still got time to AGMs. They're in November, December, sorry. So we'd have to work pretty quickly and smartly. Yeah, but that would be my order of proceedings. Yeah. So everyone comfortable with that? So we will just park that one. So moving forward to I've never not made a decision on the paper. Don't think we need to do anything, do we? So we'll move forward now to. Well, actually, we might so we'll move around the agenda, but so VT fees, you're happy to park that as well at this stage. So while we're discussing fees, we might flick through, thank you, Mr. Cooper, we might flick to page 128, which is 9.7, and which is the audit and risk. And sorry, I'll just get my fees. So remuneration of independent members, and it's on slow go.
Through you,
Thank
Your
you.
Worship, I'd just like to note that there's an error in paragraph 3, that there are 6 members, not 5, of the Art Committee, and there are 4 elected members, not 3. And I think there might be a slight error in the report that was put on the hub.
Yeah, thank you. And I think all councillors have got some correspondence there that there's just been a couple of errors. There was one just in regard to the REM for VT as well. It had come through as the TDHL numbers. So 9.7, look, I actually look at this quite differently. These are independent and provide a really important role, and you know, I personally would support an increase in the meeting fees. So the meetings are 4 meetings a year. They, especially the chair, provides a really important role and support for council, and I think this is really good value for money for what we're actually paying them. So I would support that, but happy to have any further discussion. I understand that some want to park that. Councillor Shannon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, in particular, it's easy to look at that figure and say 3K per meeting as if it's a big figure, but like you say, 12K over the year, given the amount of work that I know our chair actually puts in, it's not a great hourly rate for the amount of work that he does. He does an extraordinary amount of work behind the scenes, liaising with various departments in Wellington as well as around the country, and I think that increase is modest in all reality, so I'd certainly endorse it.
Thank you. Well, look, I am happy to move that. Would you like to second that? But I will open up for further discussion before I put the motion. Any further discussion? And Councillor Scott, sorry, I didn't want to miss you on any of this. I know you had a conflict on one of those before, but are you comfortable with where we're heading?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the REM for the audit and risk independence? No, that's cool. I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So, go now to 9.4, which is presentation of TDHL Limited Statement of Intent. And welcome Fraser and Mark. The floor is yours, team.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. I will take the report as read. We presented a couple of months ago the draft statement of intent, received some verbal feedback, have made those tweaks. Fraser will touch on those in a minute. I note in the long-term strategic priorities being summarised under Section 5. Section 6 lists the objectives and outcomes of these priorities, with the specific annual activity and financial performance targets for TDHL to achieve and be measured against, listed under Section 7. So that's the structure of the SOI this year, starting from long-term strategic priorities down to the annual activity financial performance targets we'll be reporting on. So I'll take all those as read, and Fraser will give an update on the changes from the verbal feedback we've received.
Alright, thanks for that. So based on the feedback primarily received at the 9 May meeting, we've expanded the strategic priorities to include specific engagement with Council on the LTP process next year to ensure that TDHL is closer to align to Council's objectives. In the annual performance targets, we've included reviewing the dividend policy, which will flow from the creation of the SIPO. We updated the financial forecast. We've also updated the nature and scope of activities to include a greater focus on governance and our role as governors, and we've included provision for a board skills matrix, which we've already provided. So, happy to take questions.
Thank you. Questions regarding SOI? Councillor Pye.
Thanks. So just probably more some comments to think about for next year rather than questions or wanting changes for this year. The first one is with your vision, and it's to be a successful and diversified regional investment company. And I just wonder how you measure that, and you talk about diversification, and what do you mean by diversification? Is it investment type? Is it investment location? Is it all of the above?
It could be all of the above, but it's more investment type rather than location because we are Timaru District holdings, so we're predominantly focused in the Timaru District. If there's some synergies with existing business streams that take us wider, that could be an opportunity, but that'll be driven by the SIPO as well in terms of defining a lot of that, which we're keen to work in conjunction with council with to make sure we stay within our lane going forward.
This is probably more referring to the fact that the bulk of your investment's down at the port. And so I still meant within the Timaru District, but are you looking at diversifying that?
Yeah, in terms of land, it will be diversification away from the port area, but then we want to make sure that if any opportunities arise down there, we still take those as well to give benefit to the port and our associate shareholding in Prime Port itself.
Just on the financial performance targets, and we look at EBITDA, and I just question, and I don't really have a view on that, but I question if that's the right measure, because if we're not covering interest, or if interest is increasing, surely our rental income should be increasing. You know, I'm not convinced that's the right measure, because it's easy to make money before interest. Well, it's not easy, but it's easier.
Yeah, we can have a look at that and review the best measure. So we'll have a look at that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to leave it in there and maybe look at adding additional. Yeah, absolutely. I take your point. I just probably need to think about that one a bit more about what the right measures are to illustrate. And there are the other measures in there as well. So. Dividend, if we get that policy right and we've got a good return coming, our asset base is growing, equity's increasing. I think it's the combination, so I guess we'd be keen to have an ongoing conversation for any gaps there are.
On the profit and loss summary, and this just might be the timing and that it doesn't go out far enough, but you look along the summary of gross profit from property from the FY22 year to FY26 is a 30% increase, yet our expenses are a 96% increase. And like if we keep going on that trajectory, it's not going to end well. But do you think further out that will, you know, is it because we're spending money on investing to increase income? Or I just wonder if you could talk to that.
Yeah, it is a reflection of the increased investment in the company. And we have loaded a lot of those costs in early and delayed a lot of the revenue just so that it's stress tested to the maximum. We don't see that as being a trend.
No, you go for it.
My last one is around, I was under the point 11, the governance. I was pleased to see the change from last year, and that this year you've included the updated skills matrix in the annual board performances. Really pleased to see that. And then I had a question around, and I just can't remember what it was, so around point 12 and the ratio of consolidated shareholder funds to total assets. And it says that the ratio should remain above 25%. And I just wondered where that figure came from, because it seemed very, very low to me, but maybe that's a ratio that council should be including in their letter of expectations to you.
That's a historic figure that we've never changed, and we looked at this year and we left it and we're happy to discuss it and receive it in a letter of expectation because it is very low.
No, you're right. It's good. Is it? Yeah. You're all good? Yeah, no worries. Further questions? Councillor Booth, thanks.
Yeah, I guess I'm just looking at your profit and loss summary. Look going forward, and probably further to what Michelle's talking about. You know, there doesn't appear to be a lot of upside in the long term. But then you're saying you're investing for the future, so there must be a reason why you're doing that. And so, I guess, would you not expect to sort of have another number there to show potentially what you're thinking it's going to be? And I assume this has got something to do with your property investment and when actually the funds will start to flow through. So when you're doing something like that, should that be bundled into one project and then have a cost base in because it's going to cost X amount of money to hold before you start getting funds back for the company. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. And I guess to Fraser's point before, there are costs up front in terms of the land development projects, and then revenue comes down the stream. This is a 3-year SOI in line with statutory requirements. The modelling we do is further out, the 15-25 year period, depending on the project. That's all consolidated up into our financials. We have further modelling out where the cash flow comes further. So I think to go into that in more detail, we should do that in another workshop to give surety to the councillors around our work that we've done in regards to those particular projects to show when the benefits will be realised.
Yeah, I think that'd be quite good if you were to share those perhaps in a more private situation, and so as we've got some appreciation of the uplift.
No, you're right. Yeah, your project specific analysis would be great. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, Councillor Pai.
Sorry, I do want to ask my last two questions. One's just a comment. Point 16, you talk about procedures for acquisition of other interests, and it says it's set out on the Constitution, and then you have to go to the Companies Office to look up the Constitution. I think just for transparency, it would be better just to include what's in the Constitution in that point, so people don't have to go digging. And the other one was around the dividend policy, and it's something I've asked on the other side of it when we get our financial reports for council. I just wondered if you could give me a little bit of flavour of your cash flow and why it's so difficult to budget and you just pay them when you can, as opposed to, I would have thought your cash flow is pretty static and it should just be a set time, we're going to pay you now and we're going to pay you then.
Our dividend payments timings are set. And our revenue is relatively static. There's a bit of a 3-monthly pattern to it. Quite a few rents are payable 3-monthly, but
I appreciate the comment there. I see the intention is to pay out as cash flows allow. Cash flows do allow it, and we budget it in at set periods.
I wonder if we have a bit of a mismatch, because I know it's a question I've asked of our finance team and going, why have we got a budgeted dividend but we haven't received it? So there just must be a mismatch there between council and the holdings company.
Already, so any further questions? We can probably move to the recommendations. So was there further questions? No. Councillor Scott, you're okay there? Yeah, perfect, thank you. Where are we? Sorry, moving slow. Recommendations. Oh, that's not it. Yeah, sorry, apologies. That council receives a note. There we go, it was worth the wait. Happy to move that, Councillor Booth, thank you. Can I have someone second that? Thank you, Councillor Pai. Put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Thank you, team. Appreciate that. That was 9.4. We move now to 9.6. Presentation of VT Limited Statement of Intent. Welcome, Nigel. And sorry, we had just, for the councillors' sake, there is on the hub, there's a third report that is the statement of intent, because the first one wasn't updated correctly. So I think you would have picked that up through emails, and the correct statement of intent is just in a separate document. So you're all aware of where that sits? Yeah, perfect. So we'll pass to you, Nigel, thanks.
Thanks, Your Worship. Good afternoon, everyone. We forwarded Statement of intent, presented to council in draft format at the end of February. Spoke to it briefly at, last quarterly, report, and we had an SOI specific workshop with you on the 2nd of May. As your report from your Group Manager Commercial Strategy states, following presentation of that draft SOI, there were no material changes suggested or received from you all, aside from the Mayor and CE requesting the reference to the 75,000 population by 2050 just be amended to a Timaru 2050 aspirational project, and that's the only change to the SOI which we submitted immediately after that, but it's only come through to you today, I understand.
Yeah, look, it was, and it just didn't update properly in our system, so we were seeing the old version for a while there, but yeah, look, and that was request around, you know, one of the issues discussed at that workshop was the 75,000. It's not to say that we don't disagree, but there's a good 75,000, and there's also a bad 75,000. It can be look and judged a whole lot of ways. You know, Rotorua had some great population growth there for a while, but it was all in motels looking after people from out of district. So it's just how you the right and appropriate measure. But I appreciate the work that has gone into this, and we'll open now for questions. Councillor,
I'm happy to move it.
You happy to move it? Yeah, no, that's all right. We've got to move it as well. That's fine. Councillor Pike.
Sorry. A note in your your policies for accountability, and forgive me if you do this and I have forgotten, but there's a couple of KPIs in there about having a minimum of 3 months trading cash flow, and then there's another one around ratio of assets. Do you include those KPIs when you report to us? Yeah, I didn't get to the second part. Yeah, okay, that's cool. Yeah, no, that's good. Thank you.
Further, yes, Councillor Jackson. Thank you.
Nigel, just wanted to ask, how many young people are we retaining here locally versus how many are leaving? What sort of comparative numbers do we have on that?
Difficult one to measure, to be quite honest. We don't have those figures. We have the overarching figures that we get. Okay, I think you heard me what I was saying anyway. We have the overarching figures we get with the population breakdown from stats, you know, as we move through the various gaps. But look, I think it's fair to say that anecdotally, it's a lot better than it has been through the work that our industry is doing, getting into our schools and opening the eyes up as to the opportunities. So the more apprenticeships that we're seeing locally, the more students that are actually moving straight from school into the work of the world of work, with internships, as I said, apprenticeships, those sorts of things as well. So yeah, we monitor the success of the My Next Move initiative, which we sit alongside businesses, which is all about exposing, educating and exciting. So, but look, we are an area like most of provincial NZ that those students that finish our secondary school that choose to head on to further education largely go north and south of us to Otago and University of Canterbury. But the more that we can do and are doing, and council themselves are heavily involved in that as a large employer to expose, educate and excite our youth so that they know that when they go away to do their degree, for argument's sake, they know what the end outcome is rather than going to do the degree in the hope that they might get a job somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I really like this. It's a good piece of work. And one question, and I think it might be more a challenge perhaps to us and the board than to you, Nige, but you might be able to help answer. And my question is around, you know, if you look under the column, attract and assist new business to the district, you know, promote the district, facilitate, encourage, and they're all great words, and I know we do that, but how do we become quite aggressive in that regard. And I know you're probably going to put back the challenge to me and say, well, actually, we need this, this, and this, and I agree. No, but I think that's part of it, and there should be that tension, because I think, you know, we do need. It's fine to be aggressive, but if you don't have the commercial industrial land that's ready to go. So, you know, how do we, and I think we are, you know, feels like we're moving there, but how do we, you know, get that, and what does that look like? Do we do an analysis of all the businesses that aren't in Timaru that should be here? You know, can we be talking to their head offices and saying, well, actually, you know, what are some of the things? And I think this has got to be discussions at board level as well, obviously.
Thanks, Your Worship. No, I'm not throwing it back at council at all. Council are one piece of the jigsaw as our industry, as our VT, as is actually every person within our district should be a very vocal ambassador. We all live here for a reason, so we should, you know, we encourage everyone to be a very vocal and prominent ambassador for the region, for the district and the wider sub-region. I think at the end of the day, it's a sum of all the parts. You know, the work that council's doing through the district plan around identifying future development areas, both for residential and industrial, and proactively looking to open that land in conjunction with those landowners and developers is part of it. The selling of that industrial piece of land into TDHL to proactively develop that, so we've got shovel-ready land when, you know, we're working closely with Fraser and the team there around those opportunities. There's significant interest in that now that we've got that, you know, basically moving to shovel-ready. So our role, as much as anything, is ensuring that we are as prominent as possible through a variety of means, providing those resources, people telling their stories as to why they live here, not hearing from those of us that were born and bred here, but hearing from those new residents, you know, walking through the door today and talking to those, 23 plus new residential or resident families, you know, hearing from Aoraki Multicultural that, you know, there's a good number of engineers in there as well, which is great news. So it's a sum of many parts, and we've just got to continually do more and challenge ourselves, both individually, as a council, us as VT, and our wider community as well. We've all got a massive role to play. But those enabler pieces, you know, dare I open the door, water, energy, housing, people, infrastructure, they're all key parts to the jigsaw to attract and retain people in their new business and enhance business here.
Thank you. It's good. Yeah, it's the foundation stones, isn't it? They need to be there. Is that Councillor Middington? Or yeah, Councillor Middington, thanks.
It's not on topic, Nige, but while you're in the hot seat, Scott Base was due to kick off. We heard early August. Don't see much movement there. Are we moving forward? Where is it exactly at?
Yeah, my understanding is it's still scheduled for something above, there's some action above the ground, but more action above the ground later this month. So there's still just, they've had to step through those contractual aspects of it, but they are lined up. We had a meeting in VT, we had the architects, or Antarctic NZ and Lees had the architects over from England that were talking to two of our local companies that are successful with a front-end contract, and so you'll hear a lot more very shortly. They've just had to, between Lees and Antarctic NZ, they had to cross the T's and dot the I's before they can actually. It's happening. Won't happen overnight, but it will happen, says Rachel.
Well, I was just concerned rumours that more work was going back to Christchurch than being done here. No, that's not correct.
No. Lees Construction were down. They had a really good meeting with the master builders just to quell some of the rumours that were going around, and the feedback from the master builder group, who you would expect were very forthright in their questioning, was outstanding. So you will hear more, you will see more within coming weeks. So
excellent. Thank you.
And the wonderful thing, there's a ship booked at the end of the project, so they sort of have to meet that booking.
Yeah.
That's what we need to, maybe that's what we need to do, is book a ship. No, brilliant, thank you. That's really good, constructive conversation. Thanks, Nigel, appreciate that. Any further questions that I haven't missed? No, I'm happy to move that. Councillor Jackson, seconder. Well, had Alan already moved it? No, sorry, Councillor Booth had already moved it. Councillor Jackson, seconder. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, Nigel, really appreciate that. Yeah, sorry, I've missed an apology which I just want to amend. Who moved the apologies earlier on?
You and OJ.
Oh, so I just missed Ross Munro from the Pleasant Point Community Board as an apology, and I moved it. Councillor Jackson, are you happy just to amend that to include Ross? Don't want to miss that out. I'll just re-put the motion. All those in favour with that amendment to include Ross Munro, please say aye. Gets carried. Thank you. Now, delegations manual 9.8 and 131. Sorry, my iPad's on the slow go today. My apologies. Oh, and I assume. Yeah, go for it. Mr. Cooper? Yeah, go.
Through you, Your Worship. This report is the annual visit of the delegations manual to the governance team, just seeking to bring to your attention some of the updates and to make sure that we're fit for purpose in executing some of our statutory duties and delegations for the next year. Happy to take questions or bring somebody forward to answer questions if necessary. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, I do have an interesting one, and sorry, I've been looking at this in detail, but I need to bring up the delegations manual. Has everyone got a copy of the delegations manual? Yeah, it is on the hub, so you have to go into it separately. Just search delegations manual if you haven't. It's an exciting piece of reading. But 4.7.7, where is it? Sorry, I'll get your page. On 20 is budget reallocation. And I can read it to you anyway. So the authorities to reallocate budget across and within group and their activities and directorates, respectively, provided that the net cost of services for the group or directorate does not increase, to be reported to council as part of the projected actual budget revision, which is fine. I'm comfortable with it, the fact that it gets reported. My question is around governance oversight of it and understanding that it is happening. And my question probably to the governors, and I'm happy to have anyone give feedback, so Trudy, you might want to jump up, is, and I'm not wanting to slow anything down, but I'm keen to understand that what a delegation could look like. That so group managers, I'm comfortable with that, but should it be in consultation with the chair/mayor of committee? And my concern is that, as an example, take a training budget, something like that, or you could use any example, could be, if it's within the net cost that sits within, of services within that budget overall, could be moved, and we don't actually have oversight to it. We do after the fact, but I'm just wanted to put it out there as a point of discussion, and happy to have your feedback, Trudy. It's just something I've put up, I've picked up. So perhaps Kent hear a comment from the governors first, and then I'll go to Trudy. So is everyone on the page? Yep. So effectively, what oversight do we want around movement of budget within groups?
I think there probably needs to be a dollar limit on it. Like, I don't want officers coming back every time they want to spend $5,000 somewhere. And
yeah,
so
no,
it
totally.
probably needs to be quite a high dollar limit. But it has been a concern of mine that we approved the budget as a whole, and we don't end up doing this. So we'll just spend that money over there. And I'm not saying it's happening. I'm just, we don't have visibility on it.
Yeah, no, yeah, totally. And to your point, I think it's got to be, if it were to be included, it would have to be at a level. Councillor Scott, I'm just conscious of what you're running. Are you okay at the moment? No, that's cool. Any further comments, discussion? Councillor Booth.
I just wondered, did we actually let the brakes off at all during COVID and actually open some numbers up to deal with things? And potentially didn't bring numbers back?
No, the numbers that we increased temporarily, I think was only for a short time, but I think it was time limited. I can't remember what that was in regard to.
Might have been CE discretion.
I think it was for the small time period that the government hadn't effectively set up a way for elected members to make a decision. And then, so that was just for that small window. So I believe CEs across the country had that, we had to do something, but it was time limited. Yeah. But so effectively within the financial delegations that sit within the delegations manual, group managers, CE can make those decisions. And my just question is, and it's only specifically to reallocation of budget, is where does governance get the oversight to that? Yeah. Councillor Piddington.
I'm with Councillor Pye. I think we do need oversight at a level, and you know I won't get on the favourite subject of consultants, but I mean there are levels I understand other councillors have. When you overspend the budget, you've either got to go back to your, you know, the chair of the committee or the mayor. The steps within those processes. So I don't want to see, you know, allocated money for an airport and it ends up at Sea Play or vice versa. Bad examples, I know, but we need to know where it's going because we have oversight of it.
Yep.
I mean, if you look this year, we're overspending quite a chunk, millions of dollars. So that money has been spent technically without any oversight.
Yeah, it's under delegations. That's why I think it's important to have the discussion. Trudy, sorry, did you want to offer any comment?
Through you, Your Worship. From an officer's perspective, and I will give my full and frank advice, which is what you employ me for, there are challenges for either way. We want to create a space where officers have the merit of their years of experience or their qualifications to be able to make those judgments within their different activities and groups, but also balance out the need for communication and giving clear advice to governance about what's going on in the different activities. So I absolutely see both sides. What we want to create is a way that you have that clear advice and communication and have that input, but also don't create an administration nightmare at the same time. I would like, if it would meet the council's needs, to take some time to explore options for you, and to that I would encourage you to perhaps move the it's your decision as the council, but to look at moving forward on these delegations change today because they have operational challenges for us if we don't move these today, but to come back to you with a range of options about how we could do that and perhaps comparing how other councils manage that expenses or manage those delegations, so you have a full and frank conversation.
Can we run comfortable with that? And you're taking your point. We're not wanting to not sign this off today because it's, to your point, it is important. We are just receiving and noting, I think. But you're good to have you hear our concern, because I think the thing is too, if we're looking, you know, as an example, if we haven't spent in one area, you know, from our governance point of view, we're thinking, oh, that's great, we've made a saving. It comes off the bottom line, you know, but it's not necessarily the case. So not to say that it shouldn't be moved somewhere else. I think it's just that we have visual, and so we are accountable ultimately to the ratepayer. So, yeah. So if we go back to Rosen again. Oh no, here we go. So if we go back to recommendations. One three one. Sorry. Oh, sorry, Trudy. Go for it.
Through you, Your Worship, would you like to add an additional recommendation that you seek officers to go back and come up with a range of options for how we can manage those financial delegations, the aspects discussed today?
Yep, 100%.
But we'll just try and refine a resolution, sorry.
No, that's all right.
To the governance advisor for doing this on the fly.
Yeah, no, and it can just be as simple as bring back further advice. It's at 4.7.7 around the reallocation of budget. Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Burt.
My question is that in terms of this structure here, it is subject to significant scrutiny through audit and risk and external audit. And does it or does it not meet best practice? Because I know that of late, in the last few terms, our audit has been very deep dive into the detail, including in delegations. So if there is an anomaly or something that doesn't fit with best practice, I thought we would have known by now.
No, not necessarily. I think it'll be an interesting to have a look at some of the other councils, because I think it's just in the specific one. I think delegations overall make a lot of sense as far as moving the organisation forward. But for us to be accountable to the ratepayer, I think we need better oversight. Just specifically this one. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, well, that's my point. I mean, because you can't, when you set up budgets and everything, there shouldn't be any mechanisms by which you can move something without any, with no surprises across just to shore up another project. It just doesn't happen. And in my view, in terms of the time that I've been on audit and risk, there isn't a mechanism for doing that, if that's what we're talking about.
But there, yeah, I know, I take your point, but there is, because there's a hole, yeah, in this specific thing. And look, I'm not saying that there's anything untoward happening, and I've got confidence in the team, but I'm just saying it needs to come back to us so we know, as an example, whatever, there's 500k in the climate change. We might not use that. It could be reallocated somewhere else, but I'd like to know that it's reallocated somewhere else. Yeah, and that's all it is. And I think everyone would be comfortable with that. So, but there was that added recommendation, and there's also council receive and note the amendments to the delegations manual. I'll happy to move that. Councillor Shannon, everyone comfortable with that? Yeah, I'll put the motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Interim 2022 financial report. Welcome. Sorry, we've been sitting there such a long time. Welcome, Andrea, Trudy. And we are on page 168. Sorry, my apologies, my iPad's moving slow. I'm catching up. Go for it. The floor's yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to present the interim draft financial results for June 2023. Just like to note that these are very draft. We're currently working through our typical year-end adjustments, not limited to the revaluation in regards to waters and potentially roading, the depreciation calculation, the review of our financial assets, provisions around interest rate swaps and fair values, any retained earnings movements, any lease splits, and finalising the internal charges and the capitalisation of any labour. So with that in mind, being draft, we're essentially showing a deficit of $13 million for the year, with the majority being in expenses, so our revenue was higher, majority financial costs, financial revenues, but in our expenses we were over significantly, being depreciation is the biggest at 7.8 million. And we had our interest rate costs were essentially higher as well. And then with roading, waste, professional fees all adding to the large variances in regards to other expenses. Capital expenditure is only a provisional figure at this point in time. There potentially could be some movements in regards to that, but showing as a 74% spend for the year. Borrowings were sitting at 205 million for the year. and our debt to revenue ratio is 152%. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Councillor Piddington.
Just one of the concerns I've got is the financial cost being 3.4 million higher. I know everyone knows interest rates are moving up, but they're still moving up. Have we budgeted that increase for next year? So we're not going to be another 3.4 or more behind the eight ball.
So we have forecasted a higher interest rate for the annual plan this year, but obviously it's a moving target, so we can't guarantee that we've budgeted exactly right again.
So have we budgeted at 4.97?
I think we've budgeted at 5.3, something like that.
Thank you. Good question. And that's, Trudy, I know you and I talked about this the other day, the challenges you set a long-term plan and the next day, all that you put into it sometimes goes out the window if there's a financial crisis or anything else that influences those costs. So it is an interesting challenge. There must be further questions and finances. Councillor Booth, thank you.
Yeah, my old hobby horse, I mean, finance revenue 3.15, and then you've got finance cost 3.4 million higher. So, I mean, shouldn't that just be just finance and interest? Instead, you're using that income to pump up your number so as you can justify or get that number up for your borrowings.
So what page are you looking at, Ellen?
Oh, well,
specifically,
172.
172?
171, 172.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there should just be one line. And really, the decision we made 2 years ago to lock in all that money at that low thing, that's a done deal. And we're getting the benefit of that. We should not be, we shouldn't actually be showing that as income. It's, and that, you'd get, and then you're showing that expense. Well, we're going to charge everyone for that expense. And we're bumping up their debt because we're going to use that as the first number as income. It's just wrong. So I don't know why it's in there.
So what's your...
My point is that we should not be recognising the finance revenue, 3.15, as income. We're saving interest. We entered into a deal. We locked in our interest rate. We're saving money. We shouldn't actually say, oh, well cash, we're saying we're receiving that money. Are we getting that in cash? Is that physically going into a bank account and showing as income? As the interest is coming out, showing as a
that's how it would be under accounting standards.
Well, that's how I would normally think
it would be
it would
income and...
So you're getting the cash in for that number?
Some of the cash we're getting in, yes, but not all cash, because there are monthly journals that are done, because it's the timing as to when things are actually, so we've got a lot on quarterly rotation, so there's movements every month. But we'll look going forward as to how we can present it better.
Yeah, personally, I think you still need to report it as is. One is income, one is expense. I'm not sure how you get around that, but maybe further explanation or something. But no, I take your point. And I take your point, Alan. We want it to be as easy as for people to understand. Sorry, have you got another? While we're with you, Councillor Booth, you're all good. Councillor Pye, thanks.
Just on that finance revenue, with the interest income received, you've got a note there, related party interest was budgeted at 2.74 and council's currently receiving 7.04. So assume, is that related party just TDHL? And if that's the case, like that's a net effect to ratepayers, and it would be quite good to show that separately, in my mind, to other kind of outside where we are actually having a win, if you want to do it that way.
So yes, that is TDHL. From a group perspective, it eliminates itself out, but from a council perspective, it's essentially income to us. Yeah.
yeah, I agree, but it would just be good to see that separately, because you could go, of that 3.15 million surplus variance, is 3 million of it TDHL, which actually is not really a win for us. I do have a couple of other questions, and
Go for it.
I just kind of would like to almost talk you through my thought process when I'm reading this report, and I'd love to get to a point where I don't need to get my calculator out. So at point 3, it would be great to have a variance column there. I know it's kind of easy to see, but it would just be great to see it on that little summary, because I do like that summary. But point 8, and this is me getting familiar with council terminology, but you talk about operating revenue, and you do the same for the expenses, but the language is different. So at one point you call it total revenue, and then you call it operating revenue, and I'm going, shit, are these two different things? Sorry, shivers, are these two different things? So it'd be really good just to use the same language, so I'm not racing away going, oh, there's a different figure here that I don't know. Is there a risk, this might be a question for somebody else, but is there a risk that we don't proceed the theatre fast enough and we don't end up with those grants? Like, what is the contractual arrangement around the theatre grants, that we keep saying, well, we haven't done the work, so we're not getting it? At what point do the ministry just go, time's up?
And just to extend on that, what's the political risk? So I see the latest Act policy says Provincial Growth Fund is going to get cleaned up, so that would that'll be interesting.
Thank you, through your worship, councillors. So we've actually got a variation to the contract in play now with the new milestones to meet the new timelines that we're currently working with. So the team are bringing information to the table and to councillors to match that programme timeline. We have a variance within that variation of 4 to 6 months. So they're being actually very generous with some of our times, appreciating that construction contracts and timelines and going through council processes can put a month or two on to a project. So they've been very good. We've got a variation. We've got a very generous timeline now, with probably only, off the top of my head, about 4 milestones to make. We've only got approximately 4 payments now to download. Some of them are quite large. One is $5 million at the beginning of construction, but we're on track and we have a variation. It's written in stone. They cannot take that money away from us unless we absolutely do not meet the criteria, but we have some buffer time as well.
Sorry, just while you're there, Nicole, my concern is not so much the report, but going forward, we've been delayed by $20 million. So is that going to be spent, and Andrew might be able to help, in the next financial year? And are we confident that our capital program that we did previously have in place won't be impacted by those delays, if you know what I mean? Is everything just moving out by time, or are we stacking things on top of each other?
So in regards to the theatre, I can't speak to other capital projects that are not with me, but the theatre, our timeline and our spend capital for this next financial year has been built on the variation, the programme we have in play, and obviously expedience, bringing everything to the table and for councillors to agree and move the project forward. Yeah.
Yeah, so just in regard to your question there, through your worship, is that $20 million has already been carried forward and is incorporated in this year's budget, so it's not lost. Yeah, so, and the remainder that we actually spent what we promised we'd spend and delivered the capital program, so.
Sorry, I have a wee list. On page 171.9, we talk about personnel costs being ahead of budget, largely due to the salary changes relating to the living wage alignment. But I didn't think we were part of the living wage framework.
No, I've got that as well. I can sort of help answer that. No, so we're not, we've never signed up to anything, but we do, it's topical actually now. We have been requested through the long-term plan process by the Living Wage Movement to move to accredited, so that would affect all contractors doing work for us. I mean, my question, and there's some cost with doing that work to council to get to that point. So we are currently paying council staff the living wage, but that's not something we have as a policy, and as a governance team, the last time we had this conversation, was it something that we weren't wanting to tie council to. I don't know if that's unchanged. It's unchanged from my perspective. The concern that I have here, and we might be able to put this to bed now, is that with the accredited living wage in such an inflationary environment, I mean, you had Doug in the background there that 2 weeks ago was setting up a ratepayer group because of the increased cost of rates at 11%, and all these things are inflationary, and maybe the accredited living wage that would affect all our contracts but drive a lot of our costs in our contracts further is something for the future, but is it something for now? And it would probably not be nice to send, if we could come to some sort of consensus, it would be nice to be able to send that message that potentially it isn't, because I don't want staff doing work that they don't need to do when we actually aren't going to consider that seriously at this moment in time. And as you said, it's puts considerable pressure on. And not to say that I don't want us to be paying our staff the living wage, but it's the role, it's the flow-on effect to other businesses, and they will be saying, well, hey, Timaru District Council pays the accredited living wage, and so every other business should be doing so as well. And there's some real challenges for businesses out there at the moment, so is it the time to put that pressure on us? So I'd be interested to hear from councillors at the moment, because we could quite easily, I know myself and councillors Shannon have got a letter just recently received from Julian Mays, who heads the living wage group locally, and council staff are doing some work, but I'm happy to write to him and say, well, actually this isn't the time for us if I had consensus agreement from the team. I don't think we need a resolution as such, but if nods around the room would be fine. But, and happy to have a conversation around that specific point, because it is, there's some challenges in our budgets at the moment that we need to get on top of, and so, yeah. Anyone, any thoughts? Don't be shy. Councillor Booth.
I agree with you, Nigel. I just think now's not the time to be telling other businesses how to operate their business, because you might employ a school kid after work that suddenly you've given them a job, but if it goes up to the living wage, they actually are put down the road. I think we concentrate on what we do, and our contractors do what they do, and it's on them. But I'm not in favour of dictating.
And the way it works, it's specifically for contractors where their staff are working on council businesses, I believe. That, just give me a nod if I think that's correct. Yeah, but there's, we've got a heap of contractors, dozens and dozens. It's not a small list. There's other further ramifications in regard to EnviroWaste, as an example. We're receiving waste streams from Central Otago, Ashburton, Waimate, Mackenzie. It's complex, so then we need to go and discuss with all those councils. And there will be some cost in doing that work as well. Probably another consultant or staff member, to be fair. So when we're trying to save pennies, yeah. So has anyone got a contrary view to that? No. That's helpful, thank you. Councillor Booth?
Look, I'm just looking at page 182. There's a lot of red ink. I mean, that's just unbelievable. Obviously I can appreciate the depreciation impact, but there's some massive numbers that have run away, and we really need to start trying to pull these in. Who's sort of responsible to do that? I mean, I presume it's our CE's job to pull those numbers back. It's like we're spending money that we haven't got, and for instance, like corporate support, IT, they've spent 732,000 more than they budgeted for. I see cars, vehicle management, we're 525,000 under. That should be pretty straightforward, that we budget for cars and we know what our vehicles are going to cost us, and what you're going to get for the disposal that seems like a hell of a lot. I mean,
Yeah, some of those things could be timing in regard to the cars, weights, and on selling vehicles and what have you. But we'll pass to the team to answer. Thanks,
Through
Trudy.
you, Your Worship, again, these numbers are interim and draft, and we have to do the work to get them in order, and that does take us some time as we work through it. This happens the end of every financial year for most councils of this size. It's the time period of making sure everything's correct. I can't speak to the year in total before, but I can assure you that we're putting some rigour and systems around how we manage the day-to-day going forward, and we go through this with a fine-tooth comb and with our auditors to make sure that we have everything aligned. But again, these are indicative draft figures and subject to change. But we wanted to show you we were working on this and what it was at the current stage.
Andrew might be able to help me with this one. Three Waters, etc.
Right, page, can you just refer to a page?
Well, just in general on the budget, there's sewer, there's stormwater.
Yep.
It has been mentioned in here that the Three Waters has cost more money. The amount of money that the government gave us for the transition, have we spent more on the transition than they have given us?
Yeah, we're definitely having to do more work there, but we have a corresponding revenue stream coming in, which is, it is shown in the revenue account. It's not netted off against the expenditure. So yeah, we have received money, and in fact, we just recently received more money for the transition. They've given us another 2 instalments, so it takes up to 770,000, whereas it was 513.
So how much more have we spent? Have we spent 500,000 or something?
So the question is, are we putting any more? Are we putting any ratepayer money into this? The answer would be no. I would assume it's being funded by NTU. Yep.
That's correct. We haven't spent the full 513 at this stage, but we are working with the amount of work that's come in. We're continuing to get RFIs in, and some of them are quite extensive, and so we are using that money to fund the staff time and also any consultants to complete those RFIs.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, Councillor Pye, thanks.
So just on page 173 and points 11 and 12, and thank you for including those in the report that we discussed about last time around the debt cap, but this is where I had to get my calculator out, because first of all I went, when we work out the ratio, is it net debt or total debt, and because I'm not familiar with the calculation, and so what I would love to see here is, I'm interested in the headroom in a dollar amount, so I would love to see the actual calculation. This is our total income, this is our net debt, this gives you this percentage. If we were at our cap, it would be that amount of debt, and so our headroom is this. And then it would just be 100% clear for us. And I still, and this is probably in line with what Councillor Booth thinks, and I know it's outside of your control, but I still have this issue of us using total income. And is that legislated? Because I worry that we have one-offs in there, and we get close to that debt cap, and I kind of feel like the gold standard would be to identify what those one-offs are and what is the risk of us breaching our cap in future. Thanks.
The one-offs that we are, such as the landfill, aren't...
of income, so like the theatre grant would go into our income.
No, totally. Yeah. But those big ones aren't as common. They are at the moment, as we theme, I think you're right, but it's not always the case. Yeah, but it's a good, but there again, it's probably the way it's got to be reported as far as accounting, isn't it?
But there could be a table
that we can pull out to,
There could be a table added that essentially shows the calculation.
Yeah.
Because the net debt, it's not as simple as taking the debt less the cash. Essentially, we take 75% of the financial assets, because they don't all turn to cash quickly. So there is an adjustment. So hence, if you actually tried to work it out yourself, you would get a different answer. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. Councillor Pye,
I just have one last comment, and it's on page 174. So those little circles at the top I find a little bit deceiving, because it looks like with the revenue and the expenditure we haven't spent everything, because we're not fully, you know, the green doesn't go all the way around, but we have actually overspent them, which is not like the CapEx, which we have underspent, but I couldn't think of a better way of showing them, but if you can come up with a better way that shows we've actually overspent, that would be really cool.
it does look a bit deceiving, doesn't it? Yeah. Councillor Booth, and then we'll try and tidy it up.
Yeah, if we've got a financial policy strategy, I presume we have, and what does it say around, and I'm not expecting you to answer this now, but projects in general, and how long they should be phased over or paid for over a period of time? Because I just went to Local Government New Zealand the other day, and I sat in on a fairly major project, a civic project, and they were doing it over 30 years. And I'm just concerned that we're actually talking about putting one of our major ones up to 80 years, which is 3 generations. That's unheard of. This might be okay for water in the ground, pipes in the ground, but this, I'd like to know what those numbers are on based over 1 generation, and actually what our policy, our financial policy says around those capital projects. Even when you look back on some of the big stuff that we've done, such as Seabay, that was over 10 years. It was all paid back. So yeah, just a comment really.
I guess as part of the long-term plan workshops, there will be the financial strategy workshop as part of that. So that will come up in those conversations at a later date.
So that's our pitch to say when that these workshops are really useful for us to get a steer on where you want to go before you adopt it as part of the long-term plan.
Yeah, no, it's the key one. It's the buzz one, actually, one that's exciting. Financial strategy. No, it is the key one, and you know, most of us were here for last time, and you know, this is what you've got to remember: the decisions you make in that, you know, at that time are, you know, it's the path we've chosen, and you know, it's where we're heading to as far as our, you know, debt limits and those sorts of things. So we, you know, it is the most important workshop, etc., and direction we need to choose. So is it Rick? No, Councillor Pennington, thank you.
Yeah, just on that, Nigel, I'm interested though, I had a discussion with Councillor Pye before. We do make those long-term decisions at an interest rate we think is 3%. When it hits 6%, I think we should be reprioritising, because we can't afford to do everything, but we kind of half push it through, because we've got to hold and say, actually now our debt cap is getting closer, and I'm again with Councillor Pye, I want to know the number. So we're 40 million away from doing our debt cap. Is it possible to do these 3 projects, or can we only afford one? I don't think we reflect enough. That's my point. And last question from me, and it may be just round the way it's noted, but on page 181, the business unit professional costs have gone up. It's close to $1 million. People and capability, all of those consultant acting in key role for their risk assurance and cultural and recreation and cultural services. Are they replacing staff? What is that? It doesn't really tell me anything.
Through you, Your Worship, and I can't speak to every group, but my understanding is where in the labour market we've been unable to obtain a candidate, and we've had to fill those roles due to workload, and there was no one internally with the capacity or potentially capability to perform those roles, that is where we've had an obligation to still complete the work, and so we've had to seek professional services.
I guess looking at it though, it says it's singular, consultant one. I'd like to know how many, and if that's a problem, how we're resolving it. Because we can't live on consultants, you know. I had someone complain about something they'd applied for, and we'd put it through us to a consultant in Timaru that put it up to someone in Nelson that, you know, and it just seems a bit Mickey Mouse the way we're operating in those situations. And I take it into account that, but I want to know what we're doing to resolve it, not just continually do it.
But I think, I mean, that was part of the conversation with the, you know, the workshop, and I mean, you gave an example. Is that a planning example, or is that, yeah? And so that's, and that would be cost recovered, wouldn't it, in that regard? So, and that's a workforce issue. Just one thing I do want to comment on though, and you know, I discussed this, and there's, I mean, these are, I think, you know, a message for the community that these are active conversations that the team are having in every day around, you know, the costs and budget and what have you. And, you know, risk and assurance is a interesting one, and, you know, we've been on a real journey as far as audit and risk and got to a point, but the question at the moment is, well, and we've just filled the role, but actually, do we moving forward actually just say, actually, we can't do some of this work? And so that's one of the things that I know the team are, you know, actively asking themselves, and the SLT will be challenging themselves, do we actually not put the work out? Do we stop and, you know, for it could be a 6-month period and not do the work, but that has a flow-on effect to the likes of audit and risk, and say, actually, we won't be reporting on this, this and this because of this hole and that, you know, and are we as governors accepting of that risk not having that flow on? So I think there's, to your point, I just say that there's some really good conversations going on about, you know, challenging exactly what you're saying, really. Yeah. And sorry, did you want to pick up on the planning thing? I probably covered it, but yeah.
No, I think you covered it, Your Worship, but I was just going to say we have little choice. So, for example, in the planning space, when I'm looking for a senior planner, we've advertised and advertised and advertised, and then we have to go to a consultant, and we have to spend 15-20k to go find one, and then somebody comes back and we might get half an FTE. We don't even get what we wanted. So when the market is that tough, and you're breaking, or you know, you're putting your people under a lot of stress internally, you have to go out and use those consultants. So there are situations where there's no choice. It is quite tough at the moment.
Yeah, I think there's the statutory, non-statutory, and then the risk of not doing that work, isn't there, that I'm sure are considerations. Trudy.
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Piddington, I've just realised that it should say consultants. So the work that's for the risk and assurance, for example, included work completed by Deloitte, which was part of the work program that was agreed by the Audit and Risk Committee that we needed to deliver. So it was more than one. It involved the work around fraud and corruption, and just to give you some level of comfort, after completing that work, we have found that we are not exposed, we have retrained staff, and we are creating that culture about thinking and doing the right thing. So the benefit that you get as an organisation sometimes using those professional services does add value and does save potential reputational or monetary risk to the organisation going forward.
Look, I accept that, and I accept what Paul's saying. I think sometimes, though, we need a wee bit more information than 447 consultant. You know?
No, I agree, and I think it's a good point, actually. It's actually, what is that delivering? Yeah. Because often, if you mention surveyor or, engineer, bridge design, what it's actually providing, it would read quite differently, wouldn't it? Yeah, so I think your point's well made. So, yeah, look, it's not something we're going to fix overnight, but I think the point's well made. So let's just look around. Is there anything that we're missing? Councillor Scott, just give me the nod, you're okay.
I just have a couple of questions, if that's,
Yeah, go for it.
I just got two, sorry. Page 172, just with regards to Peel Forest remediation, I presume that's the landfill work? Costs related to the landfill?
Yeah, so the 418 Peel Forest remediation costs.
Yes,
I just, is that land, oh yeah, sorry.
yes, that is correct. That is the costs that have been incurred to date in regard to the remediation of that landfill. Yeah. So.
Okay, and so Andrew, since you're still there, I can't actually see you, but when will we next be provided an update on that project? Because obviously when I first came onto council, it was like urgent, and it's sort of gone a little quiet.
Yeah, we will be presenting an update probably at the next infrastructure committee meeting. At the moment, we are working with LINZ and getting consent for access to the site and to also excavate it. So that work is done.
And my next question actually was, Andrew, just around the parking facilities as well. Obviously some more professional fees around our Sophia Street car park. And again, I just wondered when the next update was going to be on that piece of work, because that's obviously that's that one-off that we're talking about that could have quite an impact on our financial position.
Yep, that's his work in regard to structural assessment of the car park and some design work to look at bringing it up to code. That work is still proceeding at this stage. There are some other complications which I'd rather not talk about at this stage, but we will be giving an update in due course. Okay,
excellent. And just my last one was just still on page 172 around the district plan review surplus. Appreciating that the schedule, we're just working on that sort of schedule. I just wondered if the 1.09 was a little bit under budget for that work. So I just wondered if that had been reviewed against this, the amount of work that needs to be done in that space over quite a long period of time. Just wondered if Andrea or Trudy, that had been reviewed again.
Yeah, through you, Your Worship. Thank you for that question, Councillor Scott.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're right. It is a little bit light for the size of the task ahead of us in terms of 20 plus hearings and all the work that goes alongside that. We will have to come to council for further budget, probably through the LTP process. Because it's not just the hearings in this next sort of 12 to 18 months, however long it takes us to get through them, hopefully 12 months. It's the period following that where we may have appeals and other mediation processes to work through. And we can't put a dollar figure on that at this time, but we will have to come back to council for more.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Councillor Scott. Andrew.
I would just like to make a comment around the Peel Forest remediation costs. In 21-22, we actually put through a provision in that particular financial year. So costs associated with that provision will actually get covered as part of the year-end process. So the Peel Forest will essentially come out of the balance sheet and offset these.
Yeah, because that'll effectively still be loan funded as a whole project, won't it? Yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. Right, thanks everyone. We're all comfortable with that. Some really good questions. Thank you. Nothing further. I'm happy to move the report. Councillor Booth, you happy to second that so that the summary draft financial results we'll put emphasis on draft financial results to the 30th of June 2023 be received and noted. Put the motion, all those... No, that's right. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Brilliant. So, Andrew, stay there. We have no urgent business, but just a minor nature item. Have we had an update at all from Waka Kotahi? Sorry, and thank you, ladies. Appreciate that. Go for it.
Yep. Thank you, Worship. And be fairly quick here. The answer is no. We haven't received any information or update from Waka Kotahi. I assure you that we will follow that up after this meeting. Yeah.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah, I just think it's important we do follow it up because they're obviously keen to come present and then run away. Because Mr. Cagle said, I'll be back to you shortly. So I just want to keep the acid on it, Mr. Cagle.
Yep, I assure you I will, and I'm just as interested.
Yeah, no, their entire, actually, once they come through with their entire work program, I think that'd be great for governance to see, because, yeah, that would interest us all, I believe. So I think that's it. Thank you, everyone. We've got a couple of minutes to sort in public, so I'll move us now to exclusion of the public, and I have a seconder for that. Councillor Booth, thank you. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we'll just have a wee break while we sort out the live stream. And for those online, we're now finished, and we've just got to confirm some minutes in public excluded. Thank you.